Good morning and welcome to the ABC's coverage of the 2023 Anzac Day March, live from the Shrine of Remembrance in Melbourne. It's great to see that registrations for the march have been rising year on year, and today we hope to see record crowds here in Melbourne and right across Victoria and Australia to honour those diggers past and present. This morning began with 40,000 people on this spot, standing silently in the pre-dawn light with family, friends and mates, and goosebumps rising at the sounds of the last post for the traditional dawn service.
In memory of the fallen. They went with songs to the battle. They were young, straight of limb, true of eye, steady and aglow. They were staunch to the end against odds uncounted. They fell with their faces to the foe. They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
Every Anzac Day is both historic and tragic. Historic because each year marks the anniversary of another war, another battle. Tragic because of the terrible price paid by young Australians, like Sub-Lieutenant Sinclair, to create that history, our history. In other words, their sacrifice is our inheritance. And as the inheritors of Anzac Day, we have an obligation to never forget the past sacrifices that made possible our future.
In Flanders fields, the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place. And in the sky, the larks still bravely singing fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago, we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields.
The red poppies were the first flowers to grow in the springs at Flanders and across the once battle-mangled land of the Western Front during the First World War. And the sweet and delicate red bloom is a sign of life, a symbol of giving, and a reminder that even from the horror, there will be a future. Shrine Guard, please dismount. That concludes the Anzac Day Dawn service. On behalf of RSL Victoria, thank you for standing with us in this peaceful reflection of dawn here at the Shrine of Remembrance. As we remember all those who served and the people who missed them and loved them.
Some emotional pictures to start the day. Now, let's hear from Margaret Paul. She's going to be out and about throughout the march, speaking to diggers and dignitaries, families and friends. But first, with the all-important weather forecast.
Good morning, Paul. It's a privilege to be here at the Shrine of Remembrance, not only earlier this morning for the dawn service, but now as well for the march. Near perfect conditions in beautiful Melbourne today as I chat to current and former serving members of the forces, as well as dignitaries and members of the community who've come along today to pay their respects. Well, it's forecast to get to a top of 25 degrees here in Melbourne, a really lovely day with northerly winds up to 25 kilometres an hour, easing off in the afternoon, and zero chance of rain. It was a really emotional moment this morning here at the Shrine with record numbers here for the dawn service, and we're expecting those strong numbers to continue throughout the morning for the march. But what I'm most looking forward to is just having those conversations with people who have come along to pay their respects on this really emotional day. So Paul, I look forward to bringing you all those stories from the Shrine of Remembrance this morning.
Thanks, Margaret, and we look forward to crossing back to Margaret during the morning. Well, as you can see, the ceremonies are about to begin. The band has been playing. You can see the band just in front of you there. Our broadcast position is just off to the right, and Melbourne is a picture today. And it could not have been a better dawn service. Just magnificent. Some 40,000, as I said. They're expecting 50 here today for the march, and I would say we will reach that with such magnificent weather and a great lineup ahead of us. The march will get underway, stepping off at Flinders Street Station there in the background. You can see the Arts Centre, by the way, that was bathed in red light this morning for those for the dawn service ceremonies, and then the marchers, as they start at Flinders Street, will make their way up St Kilda Road, and here they come onto Anzac Avenue in front of the Shrine, and finally through to the forecourt, where we will see the dignitaries very shortly. To help guide us through this magnificent morning, joining me in the hosting position are our expert commentators representing the Army, Major James Ealing, Navy, Terry Making, and Air Force, Chris Hudnett. Now, Chris has been with us for a couple of years. Chris, welcome back.
Thank you, Paul. Good to be with you.
Thank you. And James and Terry with us for the first time. Looking forward to getting your reflections as well as observations and talking us through the march. James, you excited to represent Army today and talk through some significant events as well?
Indeed, it's a great honour, I think, to be sitting here watching the marches. I've done the march a few times. It really is a special day for all of the veterans.
And Terry, you're usually carrying one of the banners, but you've stepped aside from those duties very generously today to be with us.
Yes, on Friday when they said to me I would be helping out, I was probably a little bit worried about not being with my old unit, as in the scrap iron flotilla, but I'm pleased to be here. And I was talking to Jason Cook, who's the Chief Marshal, just a few minutes ago, and he said to me, good luck. I said, don't say good luck yet, mate. You never know what it's going to be like. And he said, well, you're better than nobody.
But it's great. It's great to have you here, and you make sure that you spot that banner and make sure they're the person who's stepping in does a great job. One of the big anniversaries today is the Korean War. Came to an end in 1953. Armistice Day on July 27, back in 1953. James, is it the forgotten war?
I think in a lot of respects it is. It came at the end of the Second World War. It started in 1950. So a lot of people were, in Australia, we'd paid a heavy cost for the Second World War, and people were really focused on getting on with their lives. The North Koreans' invasion came as a complete surprise for the United States, which had been winding down their military. They were looking to build up their economies. And so we see a very difficult situation for the South Koreans as they fought to retain their country, and they were forced back into a small perimeter around Busan. And I was lucky enough to go to, well, Busan they call it now. I was there probably about 4 years ago before COVID. And it's really interesting the way that they reflect on just how bad the situation was for their country. Yeah.
So 339 Australian lives were lost in that in Korea, and some 18,000 Australians served there. So it was a significant contribution.
It was a huge contribution, from across the ADF. So the RAAF were first in with a squadron of P-51 Mustangs. 3 RAR deployed into Busan on the 28th of September to lead the push up the peninsula, or not to lead, but to take part in it. So a significant, and a lot of units rotated through as well. So a large contingent of Australians served in the Korean War, and a lot of it has been forgotten. And I think partially because of the timing, partially because of the fact that it was a war that wasn't as close as it was the Second World War in Japan, coming down into New Guinea. Yeah. So one of the little forgotten wars, but really important because we see South Korea now, such an important powerhouse, an economic powerhouse, developing a whole range of technologies. We're buying equipment from them for the army. So interesting.
And it's good to be able to talk about it today, 70 years after it's finished. Well, here it is. The march is well underway now. And as I said, the route along St Kilda Road and then up Anzac Avenue. And we can see that the dignitaries, including the Premier, are making their way up to those front steps. And we'll be hearing some lovely music as we go through.
That's John Muller. He's the Navy Korean rep today in the leadership team. He joined up as a 17-year-old in 1952, I think it was, and finished the Navy after about 45 years, so he did quite well.
Yeah, so John leading the march along with John Munro from Army and Lloyd Knight from Air Force, as we mentioned, as part of the anniversary of Korea. And two of those gentlemen, including John, who we saw there in the vehicle, served not only in Korea but also in Vietnam. And so there were quite a number of Australians that did that. There is the Premier and also the Mayor, Sally Capp, and we've got
that's a Lieutenant Governor as well there.
Yes,
and
James Angus, who gave a terrific address this morning.
Yeah. And Rob Webster, Dr. Rob Webster, the President of the Victoria RSL, and behind him is the Senior Naval Officer Victoria, Greg York, AM.
An Air Force representative there too, by Air Commodore David Strong, Paul, in the official party.
Excellent.
On the left-hand side.
And the official party will go and lay a wreath and walk up and go into the shrine. Here we've got some New Zealand return services making their way up right at the front. There's another banner there. It's 100 years commemorating the start of Legacy. And so that'll be mentioned quite a bit today as well. 100 years of Legacy. Started in 1923, of course, after World War I, to look after the families of veterans, the legatees. And well, 100 years of giving and caring.
We sometimes forget there were 89,000 Victorians were deployed overseas, and out of those 19,000 made the supreme sacrifice. And of course, when they came back, they had to look after their mates' families. And they've done a great job ever since, and I still think there's quite a few that benefit from the contribution from the Legacy people.
Absolutely. 44 Legacy clubs still in existence now. One's in London, and the others are throughout Australia, and still doing wonderful work.
That's Wing Commander David Grierson there, who was a trainer of many Air Force pilots.
He's a colleague of mine too, and he's coming to our lunch today this afternoon.
Well done.
Dave Grierson. Yep.
A good man.
And now we see the banners rolling through with some of what I guess what we'd call the modern wars, and certainly the most recent, with some younger veterans marching there.
Yes, it's disappointing that 75% of the veterans in Victoria are not part of the RSL.
And of course, the ADF's most visible contribution to Afghanistan was Operation Slipper, Special Forces Task Group operating in Afghanistan from 2001 to 2002, and again from mid-2005 to fight against the Taliban. The Australian commitment grew with the addition of further ground forces from 2006 to provide security, reconstruction, and mentor and train the Afghan National Army. The Australian forces were involved in heavy fighting. Significant battles have included Operation Anaconda in 2002 and Operation Perth in 2006, as well as actions in Chora and in 2007 and Kakarak in 2009. Casualties included 39 killed and 242 wounded, while another Australian also died with serving with the British Army. 4 Australians were awarded the Victoria Cross, their first decorations in 40 years.
Let's go down and hear from Margaret now.
Why have you come along today?
My brother's part of the military man march from Scotch College.
Okay, fantastic.
So he came along to just see that and possibly some other schools as well.
Okay, so why do you think it's important that young people as part of schools are involved in the Anzac Day March?
Anzac Day March. I mean, I think overall it's just partially to remember the sacrifices made by soldiers in the past during World War II.
Yeah, and do you remember, do you think about that much while you're here?
Yeah, definitely. It's like, I mean, like, when you're in this place and it's like shown everywhere, like on the big screen and with everyone wearing badges and stuff, it's like pretty hard to miss.
Great to see so many young people attending the march, and certainly there'll be lots of school groups, bands coming through, and they'll liven it up as we go with plenty of music, and there we can see the broader picture of Melbourne. Could it look any better than that? Just a sensational view there, and of course the camera is right on top of the shrine, so those tents are set up, and yeah, it just looks magnificent today. Usually heavy coats and beanies and scarves, and some people were rugged up to probably out of habit this morning, James, but they really weren't needed. It was quite warm this morning, so I guess that's why the big crowd came along as well.
It was a beautiful morning. We went to the dawn service at the Dandenong RSL.
Yes.
And it was quite a balmy day for an Anzac Day.
It's good. We should remember that there's lots of people celebrating in their communities and commemorating in their communities at local RSLs, and the country town ones are very special as well. So wherever you are this morning, whatever you're up to, we welcome you to the Melbourne March, and hope that you can do something special within your community as well. I should mention, Terry, that That's 110 years this year to the anniversary of the Royal Australian Navy. We'll just get Terry fixed up there. Yes, 110 years, the Royal Australian Navy, and that's of course a very special anniversary today as well.
Here we've got the SAS Association. So in 1966, the SAS squadrons rotated through Vietnam for year-long deployments. Each of the 3 Sabre squadrons did 2 tours, and the last squadron, 2 Squadron, was withdrawn in October 1971. They conducted a range of missions: medium-range reconnaissance patrols, observation of enemy troop movements, and long-range offensive operations and ambushing in enemy-dominated territory. Extremely skilled soldiers. And that Anzac bond, the SASR in Vietnam worked closely with the New Zealand SAS as well.
Yep. And we saw some of the Kiwis coming through earlier, so great that they can see each other again on this special day.
I think I'm back on the air now.
Welcome back, Terry.
Yeah,
fixed up your headset. That's good.
Yep.
Commando Association. Well represented today.
Indeed, formed in down in Foster. The Commandos started their training and were one of the first offensive units to be able to put into action against the Japanese. It worked a lot of behind the lines without supplies. Had to be very, very resourceful and cunning. And of course, they've continued that tradition on through future, through the further campaigns that they've been involved with.
That's Captain Ainsley Moorthorpe. He's the commanding officer of Cerberus, which is the largest training establishment in the ADF. And as you can see, there's quite a contingent there. I think there's about 500 from HMAS Cerberus. Covers many different categories of training that virtually everybody in the Royal Australian Navy at some time or other would be visiting Cerberus.
They all go down to Hastings.
They do, and kicked off in 1921. So they just celebrated 100 years. It took, after COVID, I think this year was the open day. It took 2 years to get to that.
Yes, yes.
But as you can see, and that's the ADF in the future is made up of these young guys, girls and boys, and at the end of the day, you might have $1 billion warship. It's not worth anything unless they can do their job. And of course, the band, this is the only band in the military that hasn't been shaved back through the razor gang and so forth.
Is that right? Budget cuts. Well, we're pleased they can be here today, and HMAS Cerberus always makes an early bid on their march for the best marchers.
I think the Air Force band, Paul, is in Turkey at the moment.
Is that right, Chris?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're a very smart group. Ainsley's been the commanding officer of 3 establishments. 2 of them got the best establishment in the Navy, so he's quite a leader. And most of the training is tri-service these days, so you find you've got a mix of Army and Air Force in there.
HMAS Adelaide being represented there as well?
Yes, that's Tony Duggan. He's the commanding officer, and that's a very smart ship. I happened to be on there yesterday and had a look at it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. One of the 2 largest ships the Navy's ever owned. Does quite a bit of work. Amphibious assault ship, of course, so it's made up of Army, Navy and Air Force in the crew. They've about 450 in the crew, and that grows to be well over 1,000 when they're transporting like 1,000 troops.
And where is it in Melbourne?
It's at Station Pier at the moment.
Yeah, okay.
Marvellous ship.
And do the sailors get some time off, or?
Well, this is their time off.
Okay.
they've only got a couple of days in between. The natives, as in the Melburnians, went home.
Yes.
That's Alistair Walsh, the commander that's leading the junior sailors from Canberra. And up until this job, he was the commanding officer of the Clearance Diving Team 1. That would be one of the toughest jobs you could get.
Yeah.
Because when you talk about commandos and so forth, that's the Navy component where demolition work, OEDs, every theatre of war where they've been in, they're like the SEALs in that sense, only tougher. And of course, this is the Naval Association that started in 1921 as well, where a couple of old diggers, or a couple of old shipmates, I should say, met at the corner of Flinders and Swanson Street. They went into Young and Jackson's, had a beer, and from that formed the Naval Association, which is across Australia now. Now that's HMAS Sydney, the crew from one of the, probably the best warships you can buy in the world today. Air warfare destroyer. Go like the clappers.
Another strong representation there.
Yes.
How often do these ships come to Melbourne?
Unfortunately, not enough, and that's one of the problems in Victoria. We've got the lowest recruiting level of any state per capita, and part of it is that's Ange Kenos there, sorry, he's one of those veterans, ex-diver. But no, we don't see enough of the Navy down here to just demonstrate how important it is to our system.
Yep.
And the RANs, of course, Women's Royal Australian Navy, those, the older ones in that group, they were the pioneers for how women were integrated into the system. Started in 1940 with Monterey, that was a communication system in Melbourne, and all top secret stuff. This is
special mention to the RANs, and in particular my
Doug Stevens,
my lovely mother, who's no doubt watching this morning.
Yeah.
Who gets special pride from seeing the RANs.
Oh well, that,
so there's my one shout out for this morning.
Excellent. Well, they're a fantastic, hard-working group and showed the way for the modern women in the Navy. And we just saw the warfare officers go through there. That was Rear Admiral John Ward who was leading that group. And you've got the menorah. This is the second menorah that we bought from the Americans. The first one was during the First World War. That'll come up a little bit later. But here we go. And you get quite a few descendants now marching to support the groups. N-class destroyers, they were operating in the Mediterranean. As you can see, the battle honours on that banner showed they were a proud group. This is probably one of the strongest associations across the Navy fraternity, the comms people. Not so many marching there today, but they've certainly got a strong contingent. Nice to see the young sailors getting out there with the older folk. That's one thing, the difference between the Navy and the Army and so forth is we don't do it by theatres of war. At the end of the day, if you are in a certain ship, then you're part of that crew. Yeah. So whether there's 1, 2, 3 or 4 of them, it doesn't matter.
It's a lot of loyalty and pride with being a part of the history of a ship, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And here you are looking at submariners. The submariners, that's almost an international fraternity where if you've been a submariner, it doesn't matter what nationality, whether you're a friend or foe, they all have ultimate respect for each other. So sometimes we have got a banner there which talks about Vietnam, but again, I'm a bit of a supporter of if you were in HMAS Sydney and it went to Vietnam, and at the end of the day, it's about HMAS Sydney.
Yeah.
And there's been several of them.
Yep.
Whether it be the First World War, Second World War, or today's Sydney. And this, the Tingara, these are the young kids really that joined when they were 15 years of age. So that started basically for the First World War. They were an old sailing ship teaching sailors, young kids, how to go about their business, teaching them a bit of discipline. And it then started up at Cerberus in 1960 with the youngsters again, and then that transferred to HMAS Lewin, where for 20 odd years there were quite a few youngsters at 15, 16 years of age joining the Navy. But they've stopped all that now. They tend to wait till you've done your HSC or VCE and so forth before you join up.
Here's the Sydney.
Sydney, this is one of the proud associations. As you can see, the battle honours there are considerable, particularly through First, Second World War. The sad loss of the Sydney with 645 in 1942, and as you know, they only discovered that several years ago. We have the Melbourne, of course, which the last one, it was the aircraft carrier. I spent a couple of years in the aircraft carrier Melbourne, which was quite an experience. And then we had the FFG just pay off recently with a new plaque installed in this reserve. And then Hobart, of course, another proud warship that we've had a few of those in Australia, but the main World War I was a light cruiser, then we had the DDG, and now we've got air warfare destroyer. Still building on the battle honours. Fantastic ships. So Hobart and Sydney, which is alongside at Station Pier, they're the same. They're the air warfare destroyers. Of course, Yarra, there's been a few of Yarras, as you can see. Sad part was that Yarra 2 was, that's Gary Taylor, that chap there. His uncle was Buck Rogers. He was in a turret on the Yarra when it was sunk by the Japanese in 42, 4th of March.
Another one of the big magnificent bands coming through here, and you're listening to Terry Making, who's our expert for Navy today, and the banners are coming thick and fast now.
That's Voyager there. Voyager, there's been 2 Voyagers. Unfortunately, the first one ran aground and then was bombed by the Japanese, 42, and then we've also got, unfortunately, Voyager 2 had that collision with the Perth, and 82 were lost. One of the things about warships is every day they're at sea, it's as if they're in action stations. They're on the ball, that's how it works. You have to hope that everyone knows their job. If the captain makes a mistake, you're in trouble. This is my group, the Scrap Iron Flotilla. Now that's
a good banner. That's the one I saw you with this morning.
Yes, that's one of the original banners, and then we've got a dozen sailors from Cerberus helping us out with that. There's no veteran from the Second World War alive anymore from the Scrap Iron Flotilla, so I was in subsequent ships. Spent a couple of tours in Vendetta, tour in Duchess.
Yeah.
And Stewart, of course. I was the engineer of Stewart when it recommissioned in 82. And the minesweepers, a lot of this, these are corvettes, but you've got Aurora and a few others that get involved in that. They did an enormous piece of work, the minesweepers, working around the coast. And of course, the West Australia was the armed merchant cruisers, where they were passenger ships, took them alongside, whacked a few guns on them, and then sent them out there into the hotspots. Canimbla was another one, and Manora. They had West Australia, Canimbla, Manora, and they did a fantastic job. These were little torpedo boats, the fair miles. A lot of these worked around Australia, but they also went north and worked in the Far East. And no showers on board, just rush in, do what you had to do and get back home. Of course, our current patrol boats, they're probably the platforms that do the most time at sea of anything, particularly the ones out of the north, doing well over 260 days a year, which is hard work for a crew.
Absolutely. Not much gets in the way of these veterans if they want to take part in the march too. Family members using wheelchairs if they must. and it's great to see the families involved in the march.
Yeah, we sometimes forget if you're alive today, you've got ancestors who are directly or indirectly involved in the First World War and the Second World War, and they may not have been on the same side.
Yeah.
It's fantastic to see the young people, the musos getting involved. It makes a good...
Yeah, it's sensational. They always do a great job. There's the cadets. A bit of a recruitment mentioned on the banner there, joined today.
Yes. Well, the big thing about the recruits is this is the Navy's contribution to young folk, so they become better citizens. And if they join the Navy, that's fantastic, but they don't have to. But it's a great opportunity for a 14 to 18-year-old youngster to get involved, learn about different things.
Where do you go if you sign up as a cadet? What's your first activity?
Oh, you probably learn left, right.
Yeah.
A little bit of marching, but at the end of the day, it's more about just learning the ethos of being a good person, and they wrap that in a bit of seamanship, a bit of technical work.
Wonderful. Well, we're going to be hearing more from Terry Making as the march goes on, but we're handing over to Army now, and Major James Ealing is with us.
Yes, and so we've got the uniform members marching up, led by the band, which is sounding fantastic.
Went too early on the praising the Navy and their marching. The Army's doing just as good, so we'll put aside the rivalry that we usually have.
Like to think we'd at least be able to hold our own when it comes to marching.
I just said we're going to put that aside, James, so that was my mistake. Looking terrific, and here come the banners.
Indeed. So the Australian Army Training Team Vietnam, the team as it was known, the most decorated unit that served in Vietnam. They were awarded 4 VCs and many other imperial and foreign awards. Initially a 30-man team grew of instructors who would go out and help the South Vietnamese Army. The team grew to 100 and then 200 by 1971. Primarily operated in ICOL, which was in the northern provinces of South Vietnam, until 1968 when a small group moved down into the Mekong Delta. They were very effective at helping South Vietnamese units develop tactics that were effective against the VC. Some of its members served with US Special Forces and CIA-sponsored programs. Others served in lonely outposts with regional and popular forces. And they were withdrawn in the 18th of December, 72.
Yeah, fascinating story of those early combatants behind the scenes in Vietnam, which probably came to light much later, didn't it? Really, the special operations they had going.
Well, and even now we're still learning stories that have come out that have been hidden for all of those years. There's some of the cadets, and it is as you said, it's a fantastic leadership development program for young Australians. My daughter led the catafalque party at the Dandenong RSL this morning, so very proud of her work as a cadet, and it's fantastic. The leadership skills that the cadets are given are just amazing.
Fantastic, yeah. It's great to see the youngsters getting involved and being inspired, no doubt. Let's go down and check in with Margaret.
We come every year because my son likes to attend and represent his grandfather's medals. So, yeah, it's an important day.
I might ask you, tell me whose medals are you wearing?
My grandpa, Ronald Holdsworth, he served in New Guinea, and he got awarded these medals for serving there. So, yeah.
And why is it important to come along and talk to us about your grandpa?
Because without him, we would, maybe lost or something, and we wouldn't be here. We got to honour what he did. So, yeah.
That's Margaret Paul down there catching up with some participants and some onlookers. And James, the banners are coming through thick and fast now.
They are indeed. The 4th 19th, that's one of 4th Brigade's units, the armoured unit. 3rd Cavalry Regiment. Armoured Corps Association, the proud Black Hats.
Formed in 1946, as you can see there. Plenty of Vietnam vets marching today.
It's a special year this year, Mark, for Vietnam vets. It's the 50th anniversary this year of the proclamation marking the end of combat operations by the then Governor-General, Sir Paul Hasluck, on 11th of January.
Yes.
104 battery. And the Royal Australian Engineers. Significant work that they've done. I think we often forget about the capability the engineers bring to the fight. Bridging capability, enabling mobility, and also counter mobility. So mines, obstacles, very important work that the engineers do.
Absolutely. We see the tunnel rats coming through now. My old mate Butch Date, he's not leading the march today for the tunnel rats. He's at his community RSLs. Clyde Pearsall is leading the charge, so to speak, for the tunnel rats.
Very tough job. Tended to be shorter in stature, but not in valour. The tunnel rats would go in and clean out the tunnels. It's very dangerous work.
Yeah, unthinkable work, really. Those underground operations, and always very well represented here in the march.
I just showed Steve Bennett there. Major, he's currently serving, also member of the RSL at Box Hill, one of the committee members.
And the signal is coming through. In artillery, we have a saying, no comms, no bombs. So the signal is really enable everything to happen. There's no command and control without good communications. The work they do is incredibly important.
Yes.
If you're just joining us, this is, of course, the Anzac Day March in Melbourne, and you can see there just the flash of the cityscape behind you. It's a beautiful day. The weather has turned it on, and so have the marchers, and thousands of people coming in to give them rounds of applause as they go past.
It was just Des Callahan. He's the Senior Vice President of the RSL in Victoria. Very proud Broadford man, ex-councillor out there.
And the RSL, of course, puts all of this on, does a magnificent job.
Yes, and it costs them a lot of money, by the way. About $300,000 a year to put this on, and takes a lot of contributions and donations from people to facilitate it. It's amazing how a few years ago it didn't cost anything.
Well, those COVID interrupted years, we probably shouldn't mention them really, but you know, it was that was a strange and uncertain time.
Very sure.
But didn't stop Anzac Day services, did it? Even if it was just a family or a street.
Yes.
But yes, it's great to be back. There's no doubt about that.
And here comes the Royal Australian Regiment Association. Australia's only regular infantry regiment. At its peak during the Vietnam War, it consisted of 9 battalions of around 800 men each. The majority of these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 battalions, did 2 12-month tours in South Vietnam. After the Vietnam War, it was reduced to 6 battalions with the merging of 2 and 4 and the merging of 5 and 7. And then 8 and 9 were merged. The role of the Australian infantry is to seek out and close with the enemy, to kill or capture them, to seize and hold ground, and to repel attack by day or night, regardless of the season, weather or terrain. And in every war Australia has fought, the infantry have borne the greatest load and taken the highest casualties. There would be very, very few veterans marching with the RAR today who would not carry the memory and can see the faces of several mates who failed to return.
I believe there's a special national reunion for 8 RAR, which served in South Vietnam in 1970. The Ambush Battalion awarded a Cross of Gallantry, the South Vietnamese award. And, a shout out to those who are coming together for their national reunion.
A 5-7 RAR Association.
Pretty impressive band.
Excellent.
And here's 1st Battalion. It started arriving in Vietnam in March 1965. It was restricted to security ops in defence of an airbase. The Australian government lifted those restrictions. They moved to be fully employed. And they worked with the 173rd Airborne Brigade. And they were actually part of the operation to clear the area for Nui Dat, which would become the big, in Phuoc Toi province, which would become the big base for the Australian operations.
It's great to see a colleague of mine, Philip Ham, in that group there too, Paul.
Yes. Yes, I know you've got a keen interest in this particular part of the march too, Chris.
Oh, we sail model boats together, so that's our connection.
Oh, is that right? That is not what I thought you'd say.
2 RAR moving through. 3 RAR awarded a presidential unit citation for its part in the Battle of Capion. Arrived in South Vietnam in December '67. And that brought the 1st Australian Task Force up to a 3 battalion strength. Five RAR moving through. They were raised in Holsworthy Barracks in Sydney in the 1st of March '65. And they moved to Vietnam April and May '66.
Okay, let's hear from Margaret now. She's with Justin Smith, the MC from this morning's service.
I'm here with Justin Smith, who was the Master of Ceremonies for the dawn service this morning. Justin, what does Anzac Day mean to you?
Look, I think for me, the ceremony, the real beauty in it is just the simplicity. The way that nothing needs to be explained, there's no gimmickry, there's no pizzazz. Everyone just wants to be here in the silence. They want to be here together. Everyone knows why they're there and they can feel it. And it's just, I think it's just one of the most beautiful things, one of the most beautiful experiences that you can ever have. Yeah, and not this one, not just this one. Yeah. What's beautiful about it is you can do it every year. Yeah. I think that's what's great.
And those silences were beautiful this morning, weren't they? And tell me what you expect from the rest of the day. What happens for you now?
For me, I think, you know, the march is on and we can hear the march in the background now. And I think it's that opportunity for people to show appreciation. You know, we have the silence in the morning and then, you know, hear the gentle clapping as the Defence Force personnel walk by. You know, and then after 12 o'clock, we have a little fun. You know, we enjoy being together. I think Anzac Day is so beautiful for that silence appreciation and then enjoyment. Enjoying being friends and it's appreciating and celebrating too, dare I say it, celebrating the things that they fought for. It's what they wanted us to have, I think.
Absolutely. Well, I hope you can enjoy the rest of the day, Justin. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Margaret. Thanks, Justin. 7th Battalion, we're keeping an eye out for Lyle Bunting here, who turns 100 later this year. Marched in 2019 and many years before that with his mate Bill Holmes. And they were known as the Terrible Twins back in the day. They were mates for 70 years. And as I said, Lyle is turning 100 later this year. And I know that his family loves to mention Bill as well. They were best of mates. I believe Lyle's the last surviving member of that battalion.
That's a fair effort, isn't it?
Yeah. It's good to see the new battle honours on there as well. Afghanistan,
yes,
so forth on these
of course, yes.
9th Battalion moving through now.
Proudly represented and they keep coming. It's just such a great turnout today. Thinking 50,000 people. Well, we're approaching that.
It could be
one RAR on the cap. And
the Mustang.
Good to see. Yeah, good to see the flash cars have made it here as well. Everyone organising that. Thank you to you.
important to see the old diggers in a muscle car.
Is that what they call them?
Yep.
The National Servicemen's Association, the NASHOs, coming through now. Because the NASHOs played a significant role in Vietnam. Conscripted, trained. Some of them went on to become officers and trained at Skyville, and fought just as well against their regular army brothers.
I think most that went over there were NASHOs, weren't they?
There was a significant proportion of them, yeah. Here we have Skyville, so that's where the officers went off to train. They would select the best out of the NASHOs who'd come in out of the ballot, and they would then go to Skyville. 27-week course it was, and trained them to be able to lead a platoon in jungle warfare. Incredibly successful. I feel that someone like Dave Sabin, who was the first intake into Skyville, he was one of the platoon commanders at the Battle of Long Tan, and so had not been with 6 RAR for very long. Was probably in Delta Company 6 RAR under Harry Smith for probably 6 months. Then they were in Vietnam for less than 2 months before the Battle of Long Tan. So just gives you an indication of how good that training program was at Skyville.
Yeah.
He's just written a book, I think, about his experience, Dave Sabin. It's about to be published. So.
Oh, has it? Yes.
It'll be a good read.
A very good read, yeah.
And quite a few went on to do permanent service, didn't they, as well? They're probably marching in other groups.
They did. Jeff Kennett was a graduate of Skyville.
Now the president of Camberwell RSL sub-branch.
Oh, is he?
With Ted Bailey as the treasurer. It's a power group for you.
Wow. Once a sapper, always a sapper. The Royal Australian Engineers Association coming through. Their cap badge, as with the artillery, ubique, which is Latin for everywhere, because everywhere you're going to go, you're going to want to take some engineers with you.
You bet.
Partially to bring the beers along, partially to enable your mobility and survivability.
All right, so they're charging the entertainment as well, were they?
Yeah.
Well, I'll have to have a good day today. Someone will be having a beer.
Was it the MPs, was it, coming through?
With the red caps? Yep.
Now, the Women's Land Army, this is very interesting. So the call-up for the Second World War created a huge manpower shortage within Australia, and so women were given a much bigger role in a range in industry, and particularly on the land. So making sure that all of the people in Australia could be fed.
And one of the big things was, at the end of the day, you needed to allow your service-trained people to go off to war, and the logistic support needed to be done by others that hadn't maybe spent 2 or 3 years training.
Well, we developed industries that we don't have in peacetime. So there was 50,000 people, predominantly women, employed in arms manufacturing and ammunition.
Good morning to the Oakley South Primary School. Their first time through. Good stuff. Don't mention it's back to school tomorrow. Last day of holidays.
They really enjoy themselves, I think, don't they, Paul?
They do. I love the chanting. I love the chanting as well. Yeah, no, they love it, Chris.
There's the champion.
That's great to see. They're getting right into it.
What's that called, the chanting and while you march? I saw that on Stripes. You can come up with your own.
I think you can.
Very American.
Yeah, okay. All right.
transport platoon, the road runners, responsible for getting the supplies out from Vung Tau, the logistics base, out to Nui Dat. And it could often be a dangerous run.
There's the General, David McLaughlin. Just there, that's the famous General.
Oh, good to see him there.
AO military, AO generalist.
Walking with his mates, great.
Yep.
161 Recce Squadron. They first deployed into Vietnam in 1965 with 2 Cessna 180s and 2 Su light observation helicopters to support the 1st Battalion. And they were based at Ben Hoa Air Base. Oh, who was that I missed?
Oh, the hospital's being recognised there.
Yeah. The Ordnance Corps. As a gunner, these are the most important people in our world. They're the people who supply the ammunition.
Ordnance Field Park coming through next. And some more Vietnam vets.
They often have to do that in very arduous circumstances. The Battle of Long Tan, the 1 Field Regiment fired 3,200 rounds during that battle.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of, it was all hands on deck to unload and unbox all of the ammunition.
Just continuously?
Continuously, yeah. And that was because of some smart planning on the ordnance officer, who made sure that there was more than there was meant to be at Nui Dat.
Yeah.
Because he knew if the boys got in trouble, they were going to need a lot of rounds.
And how do they do that? That's constantly just taking them here and there. And
yeah, so the resupply
line
was via Chinooks.
Okay.
And they were coming in. But what they didn't realise is the amount of time that it would take to get that organised and unboxed. So they shot through most of the stuff that they had on position, and it was then the resupply. And that resupply went on until, I think it was 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
In very poor conditions, the tropical thunderstorm, which blew up the Thunderbox.
Guess that's where they'll start bringing in robots to carry the ammo.
Well, they are looking at self-driving vehicles now. They've got, the Army's been trialling vehicles which will follow the vehicle in front. So partially to decrease the manpower requirements and also make it safer as well.
Police being recognised here.
And of course, the Shrine Guard are all the protection officers, PSOs.
Yeah.
They were originally World War I veterans. A couple of them had a VC winner amongst them as well.
Yeah.
And you can see from all of the places that the police have served just the important role that police provide in peacekeeping and peacemaking.
And 10% of the current police force are veterans as well.
Yeah, and a lot of Army reservists are police officers as well.
I think I will head off to the Mission to Seafarers after the march.
Corps of Commissionaires Association.
The old tip staff.
And the railways coming through. So one of the things that we forget about is that when you deploy overseas, particularly in World War II, who's going to run the railways? So many staff were employed in logistics and transport roles, making sure that the trains kept running. Because there wasn't that much requirement for that in New Guinea.
Yeah.
But a huge organisation, VicRail was back then, and a lot of their members served.
It's an interesting point, those that were in essential industries where if they wanted to join the system, like my father worked for General Motors in Adelaide during the Second World War, wanted to get into the service, couldn't go because it was a protected industry.
Yeah.
And he joined the CMF, Citizen Military Force, and then transferred into the Navy.
Yeah, went the other way around. Yeah. Found a way.
Yep.
Let's hear from Margaret again. Down to you, Margaret.
I'm here with Ben Webb, who's the Acting Chief of Veteran Services with the RSL here in Victoria. Ben, tell us, what's your role here today?
My role is to create awareness, but also be there to support any veterans who may need it, and to just, along with everyone else, commemorate the day.
Yeah, and it was a really emotional and moving service with tens of thousands of people here at the Shrine this morning. What was your perspective on how this morning went?
I thought it was a fantastic service, estimated about 40,000 people from what I've heard, and I thought really highlighted some of the Korean War, the forgotten day, along with just the sacrifice that those service personnel and their families have gone through.
And personally, what does Anzac Day mean to you?
It does focus on that respect and commemoration. For me, it is about not just those who I've known who've lost their lives and those families who are left behind, but also about the legacy that we bear moving forward.
And do you have a message to service personnel who are here today, who are, marching or perhaps marching elsewhere?
It's not often that we're in the spotlight, but I think it's a very, very good thing. So all I say to them, enjoy the day with your mates.
Yeah, well, it's a very moving day. Thank you so much for making time for us today.
Thank you.
Well said, and thank you, Margaret. If you're just joining us, you're watching the Melbourne March on Anzac Day in bright sunshine, and our experts taking us through the march and spotting some colleagues and lending us their expertise. Major James Earling, Terry Making and Chris Hudner.
That was a nice chat with Ben.
It was, wasn't it? Yes. Yeah. He summed it up nicely, and of course, as many veterans are, very understated, and you can see that it means a lot to him.
And his role in the RSL, when you talk about wraparound services, because the RSL is the only ESO, ex-service organisation, that actually looks after everything for our veteran, whilst most of it comes from federal or state resources. They're a gateway into all of those services, and Ben is the person that looks after the delivery, all of that.
Yeah.
At Vivian Bullwinkle hub he works from, which is in Legacy House.
Yep.
That's where the RSL's relocated over there to look at the partnership between the two players. So he's an important member of the team.
Terrific to have him on air today. Let's get back to Margaret with the Commanding Officer of the HMAS Adelaide.
I'm here with Captain Troy Duggan, who's the Commanding Chief Officer of HMAS Adelaide, which is currently just docked around the corner, isn't it?
Indeed. We have basically 500 soldiers, sailors and airmen with us, and it's an absolute honour and privilege to march for the first time through the streets of Melbourne.
What does it mean to be here today with your colleagues?
For us, it's an absolute privilege to be able to participate in what is honestly a period of to reflect on the courage, self-discipline and service of those who have come before us, past service people and also current.
And what's your role here today? It's such a big day. What role do you play today?
Today we sort of led the march for the ship of HMAS Adelaide, and also we have also a maritime task group here with HMAS Sydney, the destroyer as well, here at Station Pier.
I hope you can enjoy the day. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Here comes the Headquarters 1st Australian Corps Association, so 2nd AIF World War II. And they were responsible for much of the fighting in New Guinea, Balikpapan, the late landings. A very well-trained headquarters, capable of planning a lot of very complicated manoeuvres. Lae, Finschhafen, the landings at Nadzab. And you can see that over time, from their initial employment in the Middle East, they just grew in capability.
Plenty of family members representing veterans there. Wearing the medals as well, and some carrying photographs, and some real youngsters there as well, maybe for the first or second time.
2nd 7 Heavy Anti-Aircraft Regiment played a critical role in places like Milne Bay, where they were able to deny the enemy the ability to interfere with friendly operations. It's one of those skills that's kind of fallen off the radar a little bit, but probably about to make a big return as we see the operations in Ukraine and the importance of denying the enemy the ability to interfere.
Well, Milne Bay was a significant battle, wasn't it, in many ways?
It was a very important battle. It was
Breakthrough.
actually the first time that the Japanese had landed and been defeated.
Yeah.
And so Field Marshal Slim, who went on to be a Governor General of Australia, he wrote that that was the big turning point, and the morale impact that it had on his army was huge, because they knew that the Japanese weren't invincible and they could be defeated.
It's incredible to see the number of these that started off in Europe and then they came back into the Far East. You know, the work they did, the effort provided was extraordinary.
A significant amount of training required, because the fighting in the Middle East into the jungle, very, very different tactics, different logistics requirements.
The Eternal Flame, first lit in 1954 by Queen Elizabeth.
There you go, well guarded as well, and another centrepiece of a magnificent day. Let's hear from Margaret again.
I'm here with members of the Naval Association. I've got the Secretary here with me, Russell Pettis. Tell me about it, Russell. What's it been like this morning here on Anzac Day?
It's been wonderful. Of course, the weather brings everybody out, which is most important. But I think people really have come in their good numbers to reflect on what the day really means. And it's really a day of commemoration. And we think about, for us, we think about our shipmates. We think about those that have gone. We think about those, obviously, that have been lost in conflict. And for those that are still here, it's really an issue of being with your friends at a most important time for us.
Absolutely. I could see the group of you all together. That was why I wanted to come over and talk to you. How important is it to spend the day together?
It's most important because, particularly for us coming from a Navy background, you're on a ship. And on a ship, usually you've got a ship's company of so many people, depending on the size of the ship, and you become like a large family. Even though you're governed by the rules of the military, but nevertheless you still become a large family. And once you leave the ship, those bonds stay forever. And so people, you saw us talking this morning, and we were talking to friends that we haven't seen for a while, and it's a day like this when you remember those things. It's very important.
Well, a very important part of the day.
It is.
I hope you can continue to share that time together. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thanks, Margaret. Very busy down there, picking up some wonderful interviews in bright sunshine. There you go. That's Melbourne at its best on Anzac Day, with the march ongoing, and there's a sensational atmosphere, and you can see the friends marching, and then they go off to spend the day together. And Terry Making is our expert in Navy, and I'm sure he was nodding along listening to Russell speak there about just what this day means.
Yes, well, Russell's the National Secretary, and he used to be the National President, and I actually followed him into that role for several years. So it's an important aspect, and the point he made about the family is very true. And no matter how many ships you've been in, there's always one that stands out from the rest.
Yeah.
For me, that's HMAS Stewart.
Yep.
I was the engineer when Admiral Barry was the captain of that ship, and it was a fantastic crew.
And Major James Earling is our expert in Army, and now we're seeing, we'll talk about breakthrough battles of Milne Bay, the Kokoda Trail mentioned there, and the 39th Battalion.
Absolutely. So Kokoda and Milne Bay being fought at the same time, and the 39th Battalion, probably our most famous militia battalion. They weren't AIF, they weren't the regular soldiers, a militia battalion, but really first in contact on the Kokoda Trail with the Japanese, fought the withdrawal, and an incredibly well-led battalion under Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Honor. And you really can't ask much more from soldiers than the 39th Battalion lads gave. One of the things that really sticks with me is at Isurava, when it was going quite badly, they had 20 people back at the RAP, all wounded, about to be evacuated out, and the word came back that the battalion was in trouble, and 18 of them walked back into battle.
Yeah.
The two who stayed, one had his jaw had been shot off, and the other one had been shot in the leg and couldn't walk.
Yeah.
The rest of them, the walking wounded, went back to make sure that the battalion was able to fight as well as it could.
Yeah. Holding the Japanese up, and then of course the 2nd 14th was able to arrive and strengthen things there.
2nd 14th, 2nd 16th, and then multiple brigades.
Yeah.
I think it's some of the worst terrain to fight in the world. Very, very difficult. The 6th Division Engineers, 2nd AIF. The 1st Division that we formed, so these were our regular forces that were formed, with the militia not being able to be sent outside of Australia. New Guinea at the time being classed as I think it was a protectorate of Australia.
Yeah.
So the militia were able to serve in New Guinea. But the 6th Division was one of our 4 divisions that we formed, the 6th, 7th, 8th and 9th. Second, 11th coming there through. They were predominantly raised in WA, embarked in Fremantle. And it's interesting, some of the 6th Division units were actually sent to Britain in preparation for the German invasion that was expected. That's how dire the situation was in 1940. The field workshops, keeping all of the equipment running. Another one of the unsung heroes of any army, the people who are able to maintain and repair the equipment. Because the trucks, the vehicles, they often don't have they've got a fairly hard life. They get driven pretty hard.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of work for the mechanics there to be keeping the vehicles running.
You must love seeing these old banners with these famous names and places. James, in particular, I know that you have a military podcast, Principles of War, and you like talking about these battles that we don't know enough about, or perhaps have been overlooked over time.
I do, yeah. So I look at some of the older battles because I think we're forgetting about them, but we're also forgetting about the lessons that were learnt in those battles, which I think are important because they were paid for quite expensively. And what I do is I marry it up with current doctrine so that we can it's designed to help junior officers and senior NCOs get a better understanding of doctrine and to be more effective on the battlefield.
Terrific. So, Principles of War.
Principles of War podcast. Yeah, it's got about 720,000 downloads, so it's getting there.
Yeah. Good for Anzac Day as well. So we see the marchers coming through with family, some being helped along in wheelchairs and walkers. They will not be denied today their place on this beautiful Melbourne Anzac Day March.
2nd, 3rd Field Regiment, they were one of those units that deployed to Britain, then on to North Africa, fought in Crete. Syria was one of the, that's definitely one of the forgotten battles, where we were actually fighting the Vichy French. But hard fighting. 6th Division sort of cut its teeth in Syria.
Might be our first salute of the day.
Second, 4th Infantry Battalion fought in Crete. One of the big things about Crete was it was a German parachute assault.
Yeah.
The casualties were so heavy, it was pretty much the last time that Hitler employed parachutists.
Greece, Crete mentioned on that banner as well as they go past.
We had quite a few units who fought in Crete as well. Many of them fought in Greece as well. So they had a tough time because they'd been spent a lot of time in withdrawals.
Yes.
Nulli Secundus, which I think is second to none. 2nd 8th Battalion.
Yes, Greece was, in the end, it was a matter of just trying to get out.
Well, it was a political deployment, really, to support the Greeks, when realistically it was going to be operationally feasible.
And Greece had to make its own decisions about how to proceed the next couple of years.
Indeed.
There we go, the 2nd 14th. We mentioned them in the same breath as 2nd 16th, as they have Isurava on the banner.
Yep. So they fought at Isurava, then they the withdrawal back to Afogi and Minari. The grey outline there, that signifies the fact that it's a 2nd AIF.
Yes. It's good to see the kids there in the colours. Quite some work gone into organising all of that, no doubt.
Shaggy Ridge, one of the... there's actually an exercise that's held at RMC for all of the officer cadets there called Shaggy Ridge, in memory of that. It's a very imposing ridgeline up the Ramu Valley. The 2nd 16th as well, so fought alongside the 2nd 14th. I did a series on the attack on Palliers Hill, which Teddy Bear was fighting at. Yeah. He was there when Kingsbury won his VC at Isurava.
Yep.
Just a little platoon attack against some Japanese that were at the end of a ridgeline. The terrain in New Guinea, it's very steep and it's very hot. I think when you go there, you get a really good understanding of just how difficult that terrain is.
Yeah, so you can't imagine fighting there. It's hard enough to walk through, and you of course see the rock where Bruce Kingsbury was shot.
Correct. Yes. Coming on to the 7th Division now, the Silent 7th.
What's your theory on the Silent 7th? Well, they were called Silent.
Well, I think that they thought that they were a little bit hard done by with all of the coverage that the Magnificent 9th got.
Okay.
They were both extremely good divisions.
Mm. Yeah, I once thought when someone mentioned that it was because they came home and didn't talk too much about what they saw over there.
Well, I think it's one of the things that a lot of veterans from the Second World War didn't talk about. And no. I know when I spoke to Army veterans, I used to be a nurse, and I looked after a lot of them, and they would say where they went, but they wouldn't say what they did.
Yeah. Yeah, so I've seen in the last 20 years, often you hear more from veterans of World War II than they had said in their entire lives about the war.
So we've got the 2nd 14th Field Regiment here. Their hat badge with the line down the middle, it's the broken hat badge. And that was to signify they were the one regiment of the 8th Division that didn't go into the bag in Singapore or one of the other islands.
Yep.
And so their hat badge was separated, and it was only going to be put back together when all of the troops had come home. 8th Division had the hardest lot, I think, of the 4 divisions, with 2 brigades being captured at the fall of Singapore, and the other brigade being penny-packeted out to a series of islands, Ambon, Raval, where they were captured. And then we see Gulf Force. Deployed into places where the Japanese were clearly going to attack, heavily outnumbered. Many of them went bush and tried to maintain the fight against the Japanese for as long as possible. And of course, this week we saw the Montevideo Maru wreck being discovered.
Yeah.
So that's Australia's worst maritime tragedy, with around 950 troops dying. It was a ship that was moving POWs back to Japan and was attacked by a US submarine. The Japanese hadn't notified them that they were moving POWs, so there was no reason that they wouldn't attack the ship.
Amazing that they just found it. Did any of you know that they were close to making a discovery?
No.
No.
Well, the ADF had supported an operation to find it.
Yeah. Well, it's good. I mean, obviously, it's significant for the families. I've seen a lot of stories about that.
Absolutely, and there's a lot of families have been affected by it. So now that the wreck has been found, it's actually in quite deep water.
Yep.
It's amazing the new technology that enables them to do things like that, like to find the Sydney and then the AE1 submarine that was sunk in September, 14th of September 1914.
Why do you think it's so important to find those wrecks?
Well, they're rusting hulks. They're the tombstone of those that died. And I think that's the important thing, that you just need to know where it is and try to say this is a sacred site.
Yeah.
Sadly, you find things like where HMAS Perth sunk, that locals go in and they've pilfered all the metal. They're cutting bits of scrap iron off it and reducing it to nothing. For us, of course, we appreciate that there were quite a few people passed away when that happened, made the supreme sacrifice. So we see that as a sacred site, but not everyone else does.
Yeah.
And I guess it brings a lot of closure for the families involved too, of those that perished in the
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's great to see the 8th Division units being represented today. And here they are, the 9th Division, the magnificent 9th.
Good to see Churuk on the banner as well.
Yes.
Sometimes forget just how difficult that was through 1941, where Rommel couldn't make any headway. Of course, the scrap iron flotilla kept them going.
They did indeed, yes. Extremely well led by Lieutenant General Leslie Morshead, probably, I think, one of Australia's best Second World War generals.
Ming the Merciless.
Ming the Merciless, yes, that was his nickname. There was a picture of him and Churchill on the paper in London, and it said, the 9th Division, they can take it. And he said, we're not here to take it, we're here to give it. And he ordered the troops to start an aggressive patrolling program with the intent of, we're going to make no man's land our land. And that's one of the things that Australian infantry are really well known for, aggressive patrolling. And it meant that the enemy just didn't know what was going on in Tobruk.
Yes, his philosophy was, we won't wait till they come to us, we'll go to them.
Very aggressive, yeah. And indeed, Rommel saw some of the POWs and he walked up and he said they were clearly elite soldiers. 2nd 7 Pioneer Battalion.
Just pausing there, by the way, I think, because it's becoming so busy on this famous thoroughfare. So many people turning up today. They expected 50,000, might go past that. The people watching and participating, but it's nice that they can take their time. It's quite a steep hill, by the way, so some might be appreciating just a chance to catch their breath.
Field ambulance always playing a really important role in getting the casualties back so they can get support. You'll see the unit patch for the 9th Division in the shape of a T, and that is a unofficial battle honour, the T for Tobruk. And there's the platypus, the divisional symbol.
In fact, I think they issued tin medals, so to speak. They're like a medallion in the shape with their own ribbon.
Yep.
The Second Battle of El Alamein was a crucial battle. It was where Monty effected the breakout, and it was the first real victory for them in the Middle East. For quite a while, they'd been retreating for a significant amount of time, and in 13 days they fired 1.5 million rounds of artillery ammunition. And the 9th Division had a really important role to play because they triggered Rommel's Deutsche Afrika Korps, his withdrawal routes, and so they brought a whole heap of German units onto their position. Monty kept feeding the artillery in to protect them, and he was able to use all of the other units to prepare them for the breakout. And before the battle was over, Monty came to 9th Div headquarters and to congratulate Moorehead on the work that he'd done, and he said there was no other division that could have done what the 9th Division had done.
Here's some kids from Glen Waverley doing their bit today, and we saw the banner behind them. Wangaratta's own is coming through. The car's being used well, of course.
Yes, it's interesting. Originally the cars were all going to go through first, but I think it's best to have it dispersed.
I like that too, Terry. I think last year, or one of the recent years, all the cars did come at the same time, but I think if they...
it's important for the individuals as well
to be with their people. Yep.
2nd 24th fighting at Tel El Isa. That was a little known battle, but one of the things that was really important was that was where they captured Rommel's Signals Intelligence Company, and so Montgomery started getting the ultra decrypts at the same time that Rommel lost his signals intelligence. His signal intelligence people were so good that he was often reading divisional orders before the divisional commanders were reading them. So that was quite a significant win.
And Wangaratta getting a mention because it all started for them in Wangaratta. Now the banner is on the local sports ground.
It's one of the unique things, isn't it, from the war, where you had a geographic area recruited from there, and we don't do that anymore. So it's interesting to see how that plays out over time. Because each of these groups were formed by a champion. There was somebody that said, OK, we'll get our mates together, design the banner, and let's go. And I think that's one of the things we need the newer veterans to step up to the plate and say, OK, this is what I want to do for Iraq or whatever, and get it into this arrangement.
Yeah, well said. Terry Making, our expert of Navy there, and you've been listening to James Earling, of course, for the Army, and Chris Hudnett is standing by as our Air Force expert, waiting for his mob to make their big entrance.
Best till last, I think, Paul.
Yeah, saving the best till last. I think.
Who said that?
The flyover comes in about half an hour, maybe.
Yeah, maybe a bit less. Yep.
So that's another one of the highlights of the day when we see the flyover and talk about the Air Force contribution.
I think that was Diver Derrick there. Got his VC at Saddleburg. 9th Division soldier.
Plenty of photos there too of great grandparents perhaps, and even we saw the Hawks family before with the father, grandfather, and great grandfather. I like the photos. Some people think that initially when it was happening it was controversial. Terry, what's your stance?
No
photos from Terry?
Well, that's the RSL position, you see, and essentially it's...
so it's against the rules?
Yes. It's against the rules.
Sorry to the RSL, but I like the photos.
I think you're winning out by the look.
Oh, look, it means a lot for them, for families to see those faces. And if they want to proudly display those faces, yes.
I think because the primary thing is to get the veterans out there.
Yes.
We've got 105,000 veterans in Victoria, and today's the day.
Yes. Well, I can understand that.
And of course, they're not there marching for people to see them. They're there just to see their mates.
Yep.
The first instance, you've got the loyalty, then you've got the respect for the unit, and then it's, I'm here to see my mates.
Yeah.
22nd Battalion, another one of the militia battalions that served in New Guinea. They were formed in Broadmeadows. There's more of the sappers coming through. He looks proud, doesn't he?
Oh, that's great to see the big smiles.
Vietnam vet. And they're all over 70.
Yeah. Lots of festivities, or if you want to call them that, but get-togethers at least later today planned by a lot of the marchers.
Yeah.
I'll fan off, go to their communities or stay in the city and have catch-ups.
Well, after this, quite a few of them go to the dedicated tree with their plaque.
Yeah.
And whilst you've got the general march and they do whatever, they then have a solemn moment around that tree where they just think of the mates that made the supreme sacrifice or are no longer with us. And they might just spend 5-10 minutes there, but that's their time.
Yeah.
Families, veterans, and then they disperse and go and have a beer.
The Air Force veterans, Vietnam veterans, will be doing that after they march through this morning, Paul. And as you say, then we go for a meal in pub in town. So
that quiet reflection will be the most important part of the day?
It certainly is.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Let's go down and hear from Margaret.
Well, I'm here with veteran Peter Lipscomb and 4 generations of his family. Peter, what does it mean to be here with your family on Anzac Day?
Oh, it's just wonderful. It came as a surprise. Some of them came down from Sydney quite unexpectedly from my point of view, and I didn't know until last night that they were coming.
What a surprise.
And it's been a wonderful surprise, and I'm so proud of them too. And it was wonderful having them here with me today, and such a wonderful day in Melbourne too, so everything went well.
That's so good to hear. And I've got your son here with me. Tell me, what was it like to be here with the entire extended family and your father?
Oh, it's magnificent. It's really great to see everyone out here today. Lovely day and lovely weather for it, but terrific to see generations supporting the Anzac spirit. This is one of the highlights of the year for my father. It's great to see so many people out and about. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and I hope you get to enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you so much.
Here comes the 15th Field Company, RAE, so engineers again, 3rd Division, one of our militia divisions. The brigade workshops and field park, once again, more of this logistics, the electrical and mechanical engineers and the ordnance people really providing the unsung heroes of all of the operations.
Yes, a friend of mine, Colonel John Wertheimer, AM, was really supporting this in Vietnam. He went away and did his job as a major, and then on the way back he's had a book written about all the technocrats.
Yep.
Fantastic. And he was a Shrine Governor for many, many years. And he's sitting in the marquee over there at the moment, just taking it all in.
Good on him. Yeah, there's lots of marquees set up. And thank goodness they're there, because this sun, it doesn't feel like April. It's, I think it might be 25 degrees pretty soon.
And quite a few of them are immobile that are in that.
Yeah, of course.
Well,
yeah,
so.
They're being well looked after, though.
Yes.
24th Infantry Battalion, so Lay Nabzab, so that was a large amphibious assault by the 9th Division with the 7th Division coming in over the land, and they wanted to seize the airport at Nadzab early, so they were using the 503rd Parachute Infantry Regiment, which was a US regiment, the sister regiment to the 502, which was the Band of Brothers infantry regiment.
Yep.
So but they didn't have any artillery with them, and they thought they were going to need artillery. So they gave, with 2 weeks' notice, some of the gunners were going to jump in with 25-pounder short guns. So they did 2 weeks' worth of training, which included one practice jump. One of the officers broke his ankle, so his replacement made his first jump as a combat jump. And their instructors thought that it was going to be too complicated for them to jump with weapons, so they jumped without weapons. So one of the gunners wrote, "I hope the Japs are at church today." Because I don't know what would have been more terrifying, jumping out of a plane or jumping into Japanese-held territory without a weapon.
Yeah, on 2 weeks training.
And that 25-pounder short, they were made here in Melbourne.
Okay.
Salamoa, that's a beautiful place, Salamoa. I've been there. Lovely beach. And commandos raided it early in the war, and then there was the 7th Division went and took Salamoa.
Yep.
That's the 58th, 59th. So one of the militia battalions that fought in New Guinea. And there's another one, the 37th, 52nd. The militia battalions, once they got a bit of battle practice and some good leadership, were able to fight as well as often as the 2nd AIF battalions that were out there.
That all comes down to strong leadership, right? If you're going to call people up and have that short training.
They definitely, yes, and the training is critical. So some of the lads, the situation was so dire on the Kokoda track that one of the battalions was sent up there with virtually no training. So there were people, they were given their Bren guns as they were starting the march up, and but with no training to actually how to use them. So there were people who were firing a Bren gun who didn't know how to change a magazine on it.
Yeah, as you say, it shows how desperate the situation was.
Very desperate.
Tough.
For Australia as a country.
Tough stuff, though.
Very tough. Yeah, and it wasn't just the army that was in the same situation. I think the 75 Squadron deployed to Port Moresby, and they had very little supplies and very little training as well. They were dark days for the nation.
Some more field ambulance being represented here, and that's a good showing. Families coming through as well.
Field ambulances do an important job.
Goodness, young recruit.
Starting them early. How do they allocate who holds the banner? Some of those banners look quite heavy. Just whoever puts their hand up.
Luck of the draw.
Yeah.
They're pretty tricky in a strong wind too. We've done that.
It's not much of a breeze out there today. It's probably perfect conditions. As I said, it's from Flinders Street all the way up. It's you get a bit of a blow making that march. Doing well to go all the way.
The field ambulance there, I think the important thing to think about is they're doing a lot of the work that you would do in an emergency department today, but they're doing it out in the bush with very limited supplies, with a large number of casualties often. So very tough work.
It's like the Adelaide at Station Pier. They've got a fully fledged hospital with a life-saving units in it.
Yep.
I think they've got 40 staff that run the hospital on that ship.
40 staff.
Yep.
I'm being told that the number counters, I mean, they predicted 50,000 people here today. The numbers are significantly up. And there is the big wide shot, that beautiful vista of Melbourne. And there are those marquees where people are being cared for and spending part of their special day. but you can see the march goes all the way back past the Arts Centre, and you can just see the top of the Flinders Street station there. But yes, a big bumper crowd for 2023. Only a couple of years after not having any march at all because of the break in COVID, and here we are back with increased numbers. The registrations are up, and I dare say people have just woken up this morning or saw the weather yesterday and thought, if it's going to be like that again, I'm going to the march.
Brilliant. The 42nd Infantry Battalion, at Commemorate, they were some of the fighting that they did, and that's a little tiny village, probably no more than 50 people in it. And it's interesting, when we went there, one of their prized possessions was a picture of Lieutenant Colonel George Wharf, who was one of the leaders of one of the battalions that had fought in the area, and they kept that in a special place. It was pride of place for the village, and that had been sent to them by Brendan Nelson.
Yeah.
And it was just really unusual to see a picture like that, that they were so proud of.
Yeah.
The Gippsland Light Horse. And it's interesting how we do see these regional recruiting processes going through. Whereas today, you can be from in the reserves. We still keep the regional component, but for the regular army, you can be from anywhere in the country.
Yep. Just need a few more from Victoria.
Yeah, we do.
Yes, yes. If you missed that earlier, Terry, it's been telling us about how much work needs to go into some more recruitment.
That's it. I think there's about 6% join up from Victoria. It used to be 13, 14.
Yeah, yep.
And of course, with the increase in numbers, the aggregate within the ADF that's coming forward, and when you think about, we've got some of the best equipment in the world, that the technology that required, it takes years of training to get them up to speed.
So a few of the units, they've got the battle honours of Lae and Finschhafen. So Lae was where the 9th Division landed, and that was to cut off the Japanese at Lae, and that went so well that they actually pulled a brigade out and moved them up the coast into Finschhafen, an entire brigade, and they did that in I think it was about 9 days. So it just shows you how well trained the 9th Divisional Headquarters was to be able to do something like that. Interestingly enough, the American intelligence was that there was very limited resistance there. It was actually heavily fortified by the Japanese. And to complicate matters, the Japanese, after the 9th Division had conducted their landing, the Japanese conducted a landing in that same landing ground a few days later to try and disrupt the logistics work that the brigade had put in there. But the brigade prevailed, and they moved on. Here comes Usher's mob. I tried to find out what Usher's mob is, but I couldn't find any details on it. But the transport is a pivotal role in providing the supplies that a combat unit will need. And it's a prodigious amount of items that are required in prodigious quantities, particularly ammunition, fuel and water.
It's amazing how we've still got stories coming out from the Second World War and all that sort of thing. Recently, there was an old gunnery officer off Colac passed away, and there was a razor blade sitting in his bathroom cabinet, and it transpired that was from a young sailor, a steward in HMAS Colac, that had lent him the razor blade, then went on to do his work later in the day and happened to make the supreme sacrifice on that day. Was killed. And the gunnery officer kept that razor blade on that until he passed away earlier this year. Looked at it every day.
Yeah, it would have meant the world to him.
That's it.
Yeah.
Currently on display in Colac RSL.
Oh, good. Yeah. Glad they got passed on.
Yes.
Looks like the Air Force is making its big entrance in this part of the thoroughfare, Chris. Chris Hudnett is our expert, and by the way, he's very generously comes and sits with us as an expert commentator when I get the feeling that you would be just as happy down there among your mates, Chris. So thanks again.
It's a pleasure to be here, Paul. And the leader of the Air Force contingent this year is Wing Commander Rob Gill, who's the CEO of the number 21 City of Melbourne Squadron. The boys in blue, without their jackets. It must be warm out there. Oh, there's some jackets now. So it's the Air Force or the RAF Police Association coming through.
This is where we ask you about the different caps. Chris, all the different headwear that we see this time.
Yes, they're mainly assisted with the banner carrying this morning by Australian Air Force cadets. They're the ones with the brown hats.
Yep.
Doing a great job. Going through them pretty quickly. That's 86 Squadron.
We didn't get to talk about Lloyd Knight earlier, who is your RAF guy leading the entire march.
Yes, he was up there at the front.
Extraordinary experience when, you know, flights in Korea, where he fought a jet fighter, did 45 missions, and then...
Yep, absolutely.
Then flew C-130s.
C-130 for about 2,000 hours, and then served in Vietnam in helicopters.
Helicopters, how dangerous is that?
Yeah, and I worked with Lloyd when he left the Air Force and joined the Civil Aviation Authority.
Goodness.
So,
yeah, if you're just joining us, Lloyd Knight, John Munro and John Muller were leading the march this morning because of the 70th anniversary of the Korea War. And let's hear from Margaret now.
I'm here with John Ross, who's a Vietnam veteran. John, what's it like to be here on Anzac Day? You've got an enormous extended family supporting you.
It's great to have all the support of the family, of grandsons, granddaughters, my sons and son-in-law. My wife is here also, so it's a great support for me on this day. Yes.
Yeah, you've got an enormous support crew, and Angus, I know, carried the banner at one point. Angus, why are you here? Why is it important to you to come along?
Just to support my poppy and everything he did for the country, and everything he did for all of us.
You sound like you're very proud of it.
Yeah, very proud.
Wonderful, and you've got the hat on. How does it fit?
Good.
Fantastic. It was a special thing to wear Pop's hat.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, all of you, for talking to us today, and thanks for your service. Hope you enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, John, family, and thanks, Margaret, doing a terrific job there, getting those really special interviews. And you're watching the Melbourne March on Anzac Day with our experts, James, Terry and Chris. We've seen the Air Force coming through. We're on the lookout, by the way, Chris, for Bert Biggs, who is another veteran who is turning 100 in June. So very shortly turns 100. And he was with the 451 Squadron. He's going to be, I'm told that he's going to be marching with 6 great grandkids. He was a mechanic on fighter jets and went back to Corsica in 2018 to visit the graves of 12 Aussies who died there. So we're watching out for Bert Biggs, and thanks for his family for proudly sharing information about his service. The bands have been magnificent as usual. They provide the soundtrack to this marvellous occasion.
I think I missed the youngsters carrying the name of the bands.
Oh, yes.
Which we used to have, so I don't know what's happened there.
Yeah, okay.
We'll probably get into trouble for not acknowledging all the bands.
No, that's okay. The schools have certainly got their own banners.
Yeah.
And, yes, they come around a couple of times too, so we'll try and acknowledge them as best we can here. But Chris Hudnett is our expert for Air Force, and that's their time in the sun at the moment.
just saw a little while ago the banner for the two Sunderland squadrons, all in the number 10 and number 461 squadron. They flew the Sunderland flying boats.
Remarkable looking.
It's a great banner.
Crafts, aren't they? Yeah. There we go, the number 3.
3 fighter squadron. One of the oldest squadrons in the Air Force, actually. It commenced operations in 1916 and served on the Western Front. In World War II, the squadron was the first RAF unit dispatched to the Middle East in July 1940. It flew the Curtiss Tomahawk and the Kitty Hawk and the P-51 Mustang aircraft.
I think the Air Force have got it weighed off where they send the officers away.
Is that right?
Put them in the aircraft, away you go.
Yep.
Do your stuff.
I like hearing when you talk about all the different planes, Chris. And they've all got different capabilities, haven't they?
Certainly have, and a lot built in Australia actually during the Second World War, surprisingly enough.
Yeah. We're keeping our eyes peeled for the flyover, which will come through. They set off from Sale, don't they?
Yes, normally from Sale, the PC-21 aircraft.
Yep.
Sale is the training base for all flight instructors, and they undertake their 3 or 4 month course there. 458 Squadron. It's formed in Australia under the Empire Air Training Scheme and flew various versions of the Vickers Wellington bomber. There's a picture of it there on the screen. First flew in Europe with RAF Bomber Command, and then later in the Middle East. 1942 relocated to Egypt, began a new life attacking submarines and ships. .460 Squadron was the longest and largest serving of the Australian squadrons in Bomber Command. Initially equipped with Wellingtons from 1942, was re-equipped with Lancasters and flew many missions over Germany. Also supported the Allied troops in D-Day landings, and the squadron flew its last sortie over Germany on Anzac Day 1945, targeting Obersalzberg, the mountain retreat of Adolf Hitler. So it was quite significant.
Yeah.
We had quite a few pilots journey over to Europe as well, didn't we?
We did indeed. This is the Odd-Bods Association. It's an association of Australian aviators who served in non-Australian squadrons, generally RAF squadrons, who became known as the Odd-Bods. They served in various theatres of war and suffered some of the highest casualties. Estimated that they represented less than 2% of Australia's World War II enlistments, and yet estimated they comprised about 30% of Australian battle casualties.
Wow. And quite a few different names that we're not that used to. Iceland, Bermuda.
Yeah.
All those coastal missions.
There's a banner describing the various theatres of war of the RAF squadrons during the Second World War. Coming up will be shortly on the screen with the Catalina, what's known as the Catalina Club. The Catalina flying boats, which operated throughout the entire war in the Pacific. They conducted bombing, recce, SC rescue missions, and very successful in mine laying.
I see that's Captain Annette Hollian in the front there. She's a surgeon.
Okay.
And she was in Canimbla when they held that lady there.
Okay, well.
When the helicopter went down in Timor.
Okay.
Where her friends were in that helicopter, and she was required to fly in on the second one.
Yep.
She's a governor of the Shrine of Remembrance as well.
So the Beaufort come through there, and 22 Attack Bomber Squadron.
Yes, that's currently known as the City of Sydney Squadron. Operates at the moment at RAF Base Richmond. Importantly, in the Second World War, it played an important part operating Boston bombers from Port Moresby and supporting Australian ground forces in New Guinea. Number 30 Squadron operated Beaufighter aircraft. You can see a picture of it there on the banner. Known as Whispering Death by the enemy because the Beaufighters' engines used sleeve valves, which lacked the noisy valve gear common to poppet valve engines. So it was very hard to hear them coming.
I imagine that'd be a very valuable thing to have.
It was, certainly.
Yeah.
Coming up now with the various mobile works squadrons and airfield construction squadrons who played a very important role in preparing airstrips for the oncoming fighter aircraft to use, fighter and bomber aircraft to use.
So they would go in. They would go in before.
Well before.
Yeah. Wow.
Quite a very dangerous exercise.
Absolutely.
Yep.
First in.
Yep.
Second World War veteran. Amazing how tough these guys are.
Yeah. It's a long way from Flinders Street to the Shrine.
Sure is. Credit to him.
Yeah. See the RAF radar banner coming up very shortly. From late 1940, men and women were recruited and trained under extreme secrecy to serve in the RAF radar units. And by the end of the war, the RAF had over 140 radar stations and 6,000 personnel spread around the Australian coastline. Training and support unit banners.
That's a different way to do it. Carry the coat with the medals on it.
Yes.
Definitely too warm to be wearing it all the way. Well done to you, sir.
Man.
I'm very pleased to see the Air Force Association banner coming up. That's the pale blue one. Can be traced back to 1919 in December in Melbourne as an initiative that encouraged the Australian Flying Corps members to maintain contact when they came back from overseas. And you can see the organisation now supports the Air Force family and provides support welfare to serving and former members of the Air Force, honouring the heritage and proud traditions of the Air Force and fostering a spirit of friendships formed during service.
Chris, can you easily recognise those medals when you look at them?
Most of them will be Vietnam.
Yes.
Yeah, Vietnam medals, so they're very recognisable. There's number 5, Airfield Construction Squadron. I was very impressed with that banner, which has the number 5 shaped around the shovel. There it is. Always look for that one on the Anzac Day March.
Yeah, it's a beauty.
And the Australian Air Force cadets very proudly and very proudly carrying the banner, which is good to see.
And we heard about the Army and the young people signing up for the Army and Navy. What's the Air Force cadet numbers like and the recruitment there, Chris?
It's very good. They have a wing in Victoria, which is I think about 22 squadrons around the state.
Yeah.
And a lot of the young cadets go on to enlist in the Air Force. So great support.
And what's the first stop for them if they do that? Where do they go?
They go to usually one of the various squadrons would or the various flights for the Air Training Corps would pick them up and give them some general background in Air Force operations. So it's good.
Excellent. Great to see them being part of the march today.
They do a good job.
Yeah. There's the Medical Women's Service. That banner coming through. And the Women's Army Service just behind.
It's interesting how the current one Army or one Navy environment where women are in the system, sometimes they Is that your flyover?
Yes, let's pause now. Chris, over to you.
Okay, let's see them on the screen. I'm not sure how many aircraft will be participating. But
we'll have a look. What's the formation again? They go south, north?
I think they come from the north to the south and then probably turn around left hand to head west towards the west of the march.
Okay, as we see the Light Horse Regiment being recognised there. And Chris, tell us about this.
Just the one aircraft today, it appears.
Just the one?
Yeah.
So if they do north-south, they're recognising First World War.
Okay.
If they do east-west, that's Second World War, flying over the cenotaph.
Oh, I see.
And a lot of people miss the top of the cenotaph. That statue is 2 sailors, 2 soldiers and 2 aviators carrying a dead comrade.
Okay. That's good. Yeah, there's plenty of symbolism going behind it. We thought there might be 2, but just one, it seems, today. Neil McMillan is the flight instructor as part of the Central Flying School, and Flight Lieutenant Rob Cleland is another name we've been given. But just the one. Flyover would be good fun, wouldn't it, Chris?
It certainly would. Yeah, it takes me right back to 50 years ago.
I can see your mind going to different places throughout this Melbourne March, and yeah, when the flyover comes, I can see that you're up in the clouds, so to speak. Not many clouds around today.
Yeah.
There they go. They're back. Is it the Oakley South Primary School again?
Here we are.
I'm giving them votes today. Outstanding. But you do have, the memories are more vivid today, Chris, of your flying days.
Oh yes, it sort of brushes away those cobwebs, Paul, and I think back to those days flying fighter aircraft, the Sabre and the Mirage, which I trained on.
Watching earlier, saw these kids come through. They do a couple of laps each. I think they do up to maybe 3. So they definitely get their steps up and
jump in the bus and back, do it all again.
Yes, yeah. And they're full of effort, so outstanding to finish off the school holidays here in Victoria. Bright sunshine and an enormous turnout for the Melbourne Anzac Day March, and of course the old banners still come through, James. They're always represented, aren't they?
And it's fantastic to see, the descendants of these great battalions coming through.
You like seeing the World War I banners being maintained?
Well, I think it's really important. The fighting that they saw was horrific on an industrial scale, something out of all proportion to previous warfare.
Yep.
Australians volunteered in huge numbers, and it's a really important part of our history. As was, looking before then, the Boer War.
Yep.
We forget the Australian contingent that went to the Boer War, and before that, the Sudan.
Yeah. Yes, and of course before our country saw a sort of nationally formed military, so to speak.
Correct. So before Federation, it was still very much a British colony, and people volunteered in significant numbers to go and serve the King.
They did have training for militias, and so they were sort of through the 80s and 90s. Had places to go where you could learn to be a soldier. But yes, of course, it needed to be organised on a bigger scale at the start of the century.
Indeed. And there we see another one of the 9th Division units going through. 3rd Division, that'll be a First World War unit.
Like the good band of youngsters doing their job there with those old discoloured banners.
A Scout's doing a stand-up job.
Yeah, well done to the Scouts. And we should say well done to the RSL as well for organising this magnificent event year after year.
It's a big job. It really is a big job to do this.
It's a great turnout, though.
Oh, when we talk about the numbers too, it's, of course it's the people who are marching, but others who are 40,000 turned up for the dawn service, and then other people come in. They might do a dawn service in their local community and then make their way to the city and stand on the sidelines. Some of the people that you can see behind the fence there get there very, very early to get their spot. Some bring chairs and make themselves a bit more comfortable, knowing that it's a good couple of hours. And they clap the whole way. It generates a wonderful community feeling.
Dunkirk veterans, obviously, that was an important milestone in the war. The miracle at Dunkirk, being able to get so many of those troops out without any of their equipment. That created a strategic problem that would take years to solve. How are we going to rearm all of those troops?
Yeah. Great movie, Dunkirk.
Made
about 10 years ago. Sure, after a good, proper history movie. And here we come, the other nations, other nationalities recognised today. And there are many of them. And always well attended. And as Terry mentioned earlier too, often you get nationalities that, you know, we're on different sides to at some point in history. But everyone's welcome to march today and recognise their service and be recognised.
Absolutely, and I think times change, strategies change. Good turnout from the Salon ex-servicemen.
Yeah, it's a great turnout. All wearing their medals too, and no doubt they'll have a special private get-together or catch-up or time for reflection later on as well. It's great to see. Let's go down to Margaret.
I'm here with Jeff Parks from Nasho's Fair Go, and it's the first time you've marched. Tell me why that's important.
Well, it's the first time we've marched under the 1965-72 banner because most of us never felt that we fitted in anywhere. For some reason, for 50 years, we haven't organised ourselves. In the last 12 months, we got going and we've set up a group. We now have 2,500 members Australia-wide and getting a bit of traction, and we're here to try and lobby for rights for old national servicemen, the guys who didn't go to Vietnam, and we finished up with nothing for the 2 years of our service.
And why is it important to feel like you're a part of what's going on? You know, you've spoken about the benefits, but the day itself, why is it important to be part of that?
It's fabulous for these blokes to get some recognition. Most of us just slipped away into the never when we got out of the army. We weren't very popular at the end of Vietnam, and most of us just wanted to put us behind us. It's just in the last few years we're starting to realise that, hey, we did something, we should be proud of it, guys, and it's time to stand up and show the world. We did 2 years hard training and we were ready to go to Vietnam. It's just that we didn't go.
Does that ring a bell with you, Chris, about recognition?
Yeah, it's so important, Paul, to be recognised for the work that you did, irrespective of whether you went to Vietnam or not.
Yeah.
You trained for it, and you just weren't selected to go there.
Yeah. There must have been some, you know, some really uncertain times for Vietnam veterans for a long time after the war.
Yeah, and I got so much respect for the national servicemen that were called up.
Yes.
Number came out of a barrel, and they did a magnificent job
Yep.
when they went to war. So.
Oh, it's good to see that they're feeling good about their place in the march now. It did take a long time. It's a beautiful day in Melbourne. If you can't, if you're wondering, look at that bright sunshine. It's very warm. Nothing like most Anzac days where there's a chill in the air and people rug up to get here. It's quite different this morning. A terrific dawn service earlier with James Angus, Lieutenant Governor of Victoria, giving the address and really focusing in on the Korean War. And the three gentlemen who led the march this morning, Lloyd Knight, John Munro and John Muller, all being recognised for their part in Korea. And 18,000 Australians served in Korea from 1950 to 1953. No doubt there'll be a special ceremony on the 27th of July this year, which is the anniversary of the armistice. But 339 Australians died in Korea. So that is the major anniversary this year, along with 100 years of legacy, caring for families of veterans.
And they do a fantastic job of that.
They do, and no doubt they've saved some lives along the way by their care. And let's get back to Margaret.
I'm here with some of the members of the Box Hill City Band. We've been hearing the beautiful music throughout the morning. Let's have a bit of a chat to Broden from the Box Hill City Band. What's it been like marching in Anzac Day today?
Oh, it's been awesome. It's a lovely, stunning day. We had about 45 of our members, you know, from our community that all came together, and young and some not so young, and we just had a great time. It's amazing. Every single year we love it.
What does it mean to be part of this atmosphere today?
I find it means more and more every year, actually. You know, the more we come to understand why we're doing it, I guess, and the more we get to have these guys come and do it with us as well. It's really special. It's a special occasion, but I think as well for us in our little community of music making that we get to share that with some of our younger members as well. It's really special.
The role of the music is really important, isn't it? Why do you think that music plays that role in this special day?
Look, there are definitely some more historical reasons. You know, the particular type of band we are, a brass band, it's got its roots in particular that sort of older time, and so you know, for militaries marching around, military bands, similar type of ensemble. So it's something to do with having the bass drum bashing out the beat, and everyone can march along to it, and just keeps the parade ticking along. It's it's really nice.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time today and for your music this morning as well. We'll let you enjoy the rest of the day.
Cheers, thanks.
And thanks, Margaret. That's the best description of the music accompaniment for Anzac Day March I think I've heard. It wouldn't be such a special occasion without all of these bands. James Ealing is our army expert here today, and we've seen those old banners come through, and some other nationalities been represented. You can see the flags at half-mast there off to the side.
I think it's fantastic having the other nationalities marching with us today, because we rarely fight alone. We're always fighting with friends and allies.
Yes, it can be a bit awkward when the politics kick in at times, but at the end of the day, it's important to remember.
Absolutely.
It's easy to forget that the foreign servicemen we're talking about, where they've emigrated to Australia, I mean, that's a big deal. We tend to dismiss that as, oh, well, they've just flown over or shipped over. But at the end of the day, the whole household, it's a very important move.
I've relocated and contributed significantly to the culture of Australia, and particularly, our town, Melbourne.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't be the same.
And we saw that after the Second World War with the Italian immigration.
Yes.
And the Vietnamese immigration after the war.
Absolutely. Yep.
And same with the Vietnamese people and their ex-service organisations, incredibly strong.
Yes, of course, and, throughout the late 70s and all through the 80s. Vietnamese refugees, Cambodians,
yep.
And of course the Greeks. Melbourne being one of the largest Greek populations in the world.
And making our culture so much richer, and our cuisine.
Oh, you're getting hungry, James.
I am.
Okay. Well, the South Oakley Primary School band might be looked after with some nice Greek cuisine. That doesn't get any better than it does down at Oakley. Although Lonsdale Street restaurants will be throwing the remotes at the TV when I say that.
Well, there's Terry Canellis. I served with him in 4 Brigade. I think it's Terry Canellis OAM.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, he looks after the Hellenic.
Yes.
Sub-branch, doesn't he? Yeah,
exactly, yes.
In fact, we organised 1 or 2 members of Hellenic sub-branch to visit the warships yesterday, Adelaide.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Sounds like it was a bit going on there on the Adelaide. People just allowed to go through and given tours?
No, special. You had to know somebody.
Okay.
Or,
the insiders.
Yeah, it's not just...
Yeah, I want to go and see it.
Oh, well, that could probably be organised. the skipper's around here somewhere. In fact, he was going to Flemington this afternoon.
Okay.
So, and that's been cancelled, I understand, the races.
Right. Well, you mentioned the Vietnamese ex-servicemen, and here they are being represented very well, very proudly.
Yeah.
There's a big group of them, isn't there?
Yeah. Good people. I'm not sure my uniform would fit that well after so many years.
Oh, you're in good nick, mate. Wearing your medals proudly as well.
Thank you.
Pausing again just on the slight rise. There's some steps ahead of those veterans where you can take the ramp if you like. There's the Italians. And no doubt about to lay that wreath at the end of the journey.
Yes, French.
All the different headwear. Can any of you spot different nationalities through the headwear?
Not me.
No, I can't either, unfortunately. But the uniforms tend to be a little bit more elaborate than most. Designer uniforms. Very proud though they are.
Polish ex-servicemen. A lot of them flew with the RAF, and a couple of divisions were able to get out of Poland before the fall, and a very strong resistance in Poland.
Yes, Normandy mentioned on the banner.
Many of them fought in France and were evacuated to Britain as the Germans advanced to the English Channel. The Polish Navy and Air Force continued to fight under Allied command. Polish pilots gained fame during the Battle of Britain with 203 confirmed Luftwaffe kills. And they had the independent Carpathian Brigade, famous for the defence of Tobruk, and fought with the Australians there. And the 2nd Polish Corps was part of the British 8th Army in the Middle East and Italy, and fought at the Battle of Monte Cassino, and fought in Operation Market Garden in Arnhem in Holland.
See this bounce from Kiwi, Rob?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes, well done to the Kui
Smart.
students coming up from Gippsland for the day.
Yeah.
Chinese veterans and descendants of those veterans marching in sync.
And Wellington Lee, who was one of the strong members of the Australia Chinese Association, or Asia Association, passed away earlier this year. Sad loss. Long-term counsellor.
Yep.
The Chinese immigrants have been fighting with the Australians for a long time. So World War I, Billy Singh, a Chinese immigrant who was a sniper with around 280 confirmed kills, I think it was. No one shot as well as Billy Singh. He was there at Gallipoli and then went on to the Western Front.
Yeah.
That's a new way of marching.
This is where in the Second World War Malta was virtually cut off, and it took enormous effort to replenish Malta. And because of the capacity of the local community to withstand the enemy attack, they were presented with the George Cross.
Okay.
As a community effort.
Yeah.
And the locals here that proudly celebrate that particular service every year.
And I think we saw the banner for the RAF Squadron number 10 squadron actually transported that medal across to Malta at the end of the war.
Oh. Parachuted it in?
I'm not sure. I think they would have landed on the water.
And Malta's still a strong hold for the British Navy. They spent a lot of time there in that area.
Coming up behind, I think we can see the Turkish contingent. Yes,
Yep.
there we are, Turkish veterans.
And they're the famous words of Kemal Ataturk.
And the commemorative site in King's Domain here is quite a spectacular monument as well.
It is. It is. Time flies. It seems like might have been last year we were commemorating the century, 100 years since Gallipoli. But
Yes.
Of course, that was 8 years ago now.
And that was all open when John Aaron was the Minister for Veterans, and he was Turkish.
Yes.
Good Geelong man.
It's a great example of how foes can become friends again, the reconciliation that's gone on between Australia and Turkey.
Yeah. I think the irony is, if had things gone slightly differently, Turks would have actually been on our side.
Yeah. Yeah, well, then you're getting back into the into the politics of Europe and Asia, and it's it's even now when you read about it, it's quite difficult to work out the allegiances and how it all fell the way it did.
Fascinating.
Some countries, just had to make a choice.
Yes.
That suited them at the time, or probably the least worst choice.
Seems to come down to just several political leaders deciding.
Yeah. But it's probably beyond certainly my comprehension as how that all played out. But there you go. Good to have the Turkish contribution here on the Anzac Day March. As we said, the Serbians go through.
And they've certainly got some colourful headwear there.
Yes.
Not made for 25 degrees, but proudly worn nonetheless, and looking good.
It's quite a young contingent of marchers.
And there's quite a few serving people who are of Serbian ethnic backgrounds.
Yep.
And it's important they continue the tradition here.
See the march still stretching back there, back onto St Kilda Road. And that might give you some idea of how many people are around. Where are all these marchers?
The cadets.
The cadets, yeah.
Yeah, Australian Air Force cadets. It's good to see.
There they are.
Terrific to see the young folk in step with their mates.
And they've done an amazing job today of supporting the march.
Yeah.
So am I right in saying that they've been a part of the march, they go back and hop into formation and then come through one more time? Yep.
Great assistance in carrying the banners for the elderly. The veterans too. It's great to see.
Make their parents very proud.
Yeah, good. Best wishes to all those young people starting out on their bright futures.
Let's hope they all join up.
It's just a great youth development program. You know, the skills that they get, I certainly didn't get skills like that when I was their age. I think it sets them up for their careers and their lives so well.
Well, the last several decades, the ADF has taken them over, of course, and they fund their uniforms, whereas back in the old days, you had to rely on handouts and parents had to pay for things. Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
So both my kids, so my son, he was in cadets, he's now at ADFA, and Lizzie's the cadet under officer down at Dandenong. And it's an amazing program.
Yeah. And it complements other things they're doing in their life? Or?
Oh, definitely. It's a discipline and looking after your mates.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
Looking after your mates, doing presentations. They run the entire program.
Yeah.
So they've obviously got some adults there providing that adult supervision, but they're responsible for giving lectures on navigation, first aid, how to be able to survive out in the bush. So it's a fantastic program.
Yeah, strategic thinking, communication. Yeah, it sounds terrific. Canterbury girls have just gone through. Well, thank you for their contribution today.
There's all the marshals.
Oh, yeah. Finishing off on a job well done.
Yep.
And a difficult job too, I think, organising everybody in the middle of the city.
Couldn't tell whether that was Colonel Jason Cook. Was that him at the front?
I don't think it was.
No, he's probably just outside here somewhere.
I reckon that's him just there.
For those who can't see him, James is pointing out our window.
Yes, sorry. But yeah, no, it wasn't Jason.
No, it's a warrant officer.
Jason's done a fantastic job.
Yep. Particularly working full-time in the army and does this on the side.
Yes.
And let's go down to Margaret.
I'm here with Commodore Greg York, Senior Naval Officer. Tell me what Anzac Day means to you.
Well, it's a very special day for us to all remember those that were before us, served before us, and particularly gave us our freedom that we have today in this wonderful country.
And you've got a very special role coming up later today. Tell me what you've got lined up.
I have had a very busy day today already, but yes, tonight I'll be lighting the flame at the Melbourne Storm versus the Warriors National Rugby League match. So very much looking forward to that as a long-time Storm supporter.
It's a big day, isn't it, for everyone?
It is, yeah. We started with the dawn service this morning, which was fantastic, beautiful morning and lots of people. But yeah, it's remembering what happened all those years ago, well, 108 years ago now, and when they landed in Gallipoli. Yeah, it's time to reflect and time to appreciate those people that served in our military.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks, Margaret. As you can see, the march has wound down, but the services and the commemorations will continue through the day. You can see not too many people leaving the gathering. There's the band down there, and under those tents, the dignitaries are ready to perform their other duties. Now, as is customary on Anzac Day here, we have a message from the Governor-General of Australia, His Excellency, the Honourable David Hurley, and we'll hear from David Hurley very shortly. But stay with us on the ABC. We've got full coverage of Anzac Day. The Melbourne March has been a big success. Certainly the predictions of the numbers of thousands of people arriving has been surpassed, not just in the dawn service, but at the march as well. And it's been a very, very satisfying thing to see it all go off the way it has. And you know, a couple of years ago they weren't able to do this at all, and now it feels like it's back to full operations. So wonderful to see so many people turning out. The weather has made it possible, and our expert commentators have been terrific as well. James Yearling, Terry Making and Chris Hudman. And yes, it's been quite a pleasure to hear some reflections of service and hear particularly from those interviews with Margaret Paul, speaking to some higher ranking people here, and also just families who have come along. And they're
American ex-servicemen that's who they were.
Excellent. All right, and good morning to them. Now, let's hear from the Governor-General of Australia, His Excellency the Honourable David Hurley.